Okay, this video is from the Underground Guide to Study Skills. This is chapter 5, getting started at Stanford, about when I went to Stanford for college. So at Stanford, the average SAT score is 99th percentile. The pre-med classes are some of the toughest at any university. In a Stanford pre-med class, the average SAT score is the upper half of the 99th percentile, like 99.5. And Stanford's sort of the land of California valedictorians, the Harvard of the West Coast. Most of the students are from California or the adjacent states. Many of them had gone for high school to some fancy East Coast prep school, whatever, Groton or something like that. There were lots of parties, and it was mostly the California kids partying with the other California kids. I didn't know a single person. A lot of good-looking California guys, nice cars, wealthy families. Stanford had a tendency to recruit men that were guys that were good athletes. They had been like all conference or something. So it's a very sort of male, fit, athletic type of place. Everybody was talking about their social life in California, their high school sports teams, their plans at Stanford. By the way, the women were really ugly. They say 9 out of 10 California girls are pretty and the 10th one goes to Stanford. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. For me, myself, I was a total nobody. I didn't know a single person in my dorm. There was one other guy from my high school, but we weren't allowed to live together because the school wanted everybody to meet new people, but I did not like that because I didn't know a single person. I was in over my head academically. I'd been recruited on an athletic scholarship because Stanford was trying to build up its wrestling team. Before that, I had been really good and figured I'd go to Iowa. That was the best wrestling college at that time. But after I got injured, Iowa would not offer me a full scholarship, so I chose to go to Stanford. In my junior year in high school, I was 39-1, third in the state. I had almost no coaching. I just had a lot of athletic ability, and I just knew as soon as I get coaching, my technique improves. I could be really good, national champion potential. Then I fractured my growth plate on my collarbone, and it wouldn't heal. So my physique started to disappear. I got weak. Kids at school kept asking me, "What happened? You used to be strong. Come on, Raj." I couldn't wrestle my senior year of high school. I was real sad about that. I wanted to drop out and then take the year off and come back to win the state wrestling tournament. My father wouldn't let me, and I was real pissed off at him. I obeyed him, though. Back in those days, your father was the boss. You did what he said, even if you didn't like it. I wish I had run away and taken that year off and come back and won state the next year, but I didn't. I went to school, didn't wrestle that year, and I basically wasted my senior year from an athletic point of view. I really didn't know anything about Stanford. I was not like a real serious student up until that point. I always figured I'm going to be an athlete. I'll become a wrestling coach. I never even took an honors class, sort of the semi-advanced English class, which was a joke. I never even heard of an AP test. Both my parents were fuzzy foreigners, so I didn't know anything about how America works for academics. The Stanford coach somehow had heard of me, and he called me up on the phone. He says, "Pete, we have the potential to help our team. We're going to offer you a scholarship." And the big thing that got me interested was Dave and Mark Schultz, national champions, were going to be the assistant coaches. And he said, "Are you willing to sign a letter of intent with us?" And I was like, oh gosh, I was kind of desperate. I sort of like wanted to start my life over and recover from this great setback of the big athletic injury that kept me out my senior year. And I wanted to reinvent myself, almost like create a new identity. It reminded me of Kent Dorfman in the movie Animal House. The Flounder was his nickname, where he said, "I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it." I go, "Fine, I'm going to Stanford." And that's how I signed my letter of intent and accepted the scholarship to go there. And it was a chance to be coached by the Schultz brothers. Dave Schultz was like the Bruce Lee of wrestling. Mark Schultz was like Conan the Barbarian. Their nickname was the Bruise Brothers. They both won Olympic championships. They later became really famous with the movie Foxcatcher, and there's other movies about them, The Prince of Pennsylvania. And so those are my coaches. I learned more from them than any of my Stanford professors. But anyway, sitting in my dorm room alone day after day with no friends. I had gone from having a lot of friends in high school, beautiful girlfriend, everything great, wonderful family, to being totally social isolated. I got a giant calendar on my wall counting the days when I go home for Christmas vacation. So commit yourself seemed like the right choice of words. My girlfriend back home, the hometown honey, was far away in Illinois. She called me up one day and wanted to know if it would be okay with me if she went to homecoming with some other guy. And I'm like, oh God, how bad does my life suck? And she's like, "I promise not to do anything with him in a sexual way." I'm like, yeah, great freaking idea. And I got injured again while wrestling, and it looked like I was going to miss my entire freshman year of wrestling. So I was pretty sad. My girlfriend's taking off with some other guy to the dance. I'm getting B minuses or worse in my classes, and now I'm injured from wrestling. The coach disappointed in me. He's wondering if he wasted a scholarship on me. So I was pretty sad when I talked to my mother that day. And I said, Mom, I don't want to stay here. I want to come home. I want to transfer back to school in Illinois. I'm so lonely. My mother said, Peter, I want you to listen to me. I love you more than anything in the world. I want you to do something for me. I want you to try as hard as you can for 1 year at Stanford. And if at the end of the year you want to transfer back to a college close to home, that's okay. You can call me every day. And so I was really close with my mother, and I would pretty much do anything she would tell me. So I said, all right, thanks, Mom. I'll give it a try for 1 year. And I said, then I'm coming home. And that moment I finalized the decision. I'm like, gosh, my life really sucks. How can I make the most out of this? And I said to myself, well, now's the time. It's like, when Cortez was in Mexico and he burned the boats, he said, this is it. I said, I am going to become the best possible student I can be. I'm going to do everything. I have nothing else to do. I'm just going to focus on becoming the best possible student I could be. I know I've got determination. I will study until I drop out of my chair. And I didn't know if I could do it, but I knew I could push myself. I said, I'm going to make academics my new sport. I was injured. I couldn't even wrestle at the moment. I'm going to take all my sadness, frustration, anger, and energy. I'm going to channel into becoming the best possible student. I'm going to become a learning machine. And this is a good thing to have intensity of determination. And there's actually some names for this principle. When you feel inferior because you failed, the Alfred Adler inferiority principle, you want to overcompensate to make up for having failed. I felt like I had failed as an athlete, and now I wanted to make a comeback as a student. In addition, there's something called Kazimir Dobronsky theory of personality disintegration and reintegration, meaning that you fail, you're sad, you're disappointed, and you're real frustrated, but you take that frustration and anger that goes with it and you try to channel it into some other activity so you have this energy to achieve. A big part of achievement is high energy, so you got to concentrate your efforts on one thing at a time to get that high energy. And so anyways, I walked, to the stairway of the dorm room, and it looked outside over the sidewalk from a balcony, and there was vomit on the sidewalk. A lot of these Stanford kids that had real sheltered childhoods, and they're out getting drunk. And some guy had vomited, on the ground there, and I smiled, and I thought to myself, good. Go ahead, get drunk. Go ahead, go to all your parties with all your California friends. Go home every weekend with your friends. You're probably smarter than me, but it doesn't matter. While you're goofing off, I'm going to be studying, and I'm going to catch you. I was so determined. And so the reason I'm showing you this is this type of intensity, it makes you a much better student. You are engaged. And once you're engaged, you tell your brain something's important, you'll get a lot better. So, I did a couple other things, but I think that's probably the end of this chapter, just to get you started, to understand the intensity of becoming an A-plus student. I became an A-plus student at Stanford in the hardest classes. So there was no change in my brain. My first semester was really the quarter system. I could barely scrape out a B minus in an easy class. By my second year, I could get A pluses in the most difficult classes, be the best student in the whole room, because I had a transformation in my approach to academics. I didn't intrinsically change my brain, but this is what I mean by your academic IQ can be dramatically increased if you focus your energy and learn some study skills that we'll talk about in the upcoming chapters.